Hi, my name is Lisa Graves, and I'm here at the Midas Touch Network on the Legal AF channel with Court Accountability. And I am here with two amazing, informative, devoted guests who are part of a really, really important cross-coalition collaboration called Disappeared in America. So much work that they're doing to respond to the current crises that we're seeing unfolding on a daily, weekly, hourly, monthly basis over these past several months. And I'm just so excited to invite to our show today Noelle Damico and Juan Cuba. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's wonderful to be here.
I wonder, Noelle, whether you want to go first and describe a little bit about what you do and how you're part of this cross-coalition effort. And then Juan, definitely we'll get to you.
So I serve as the social justice director of the Worker Circle, a Jewish social justice organization that was founded 125 years ago by Eastern European Jewish immigrants who were fleeing pogroms and persecutions in Eastern Europe. And they came seeking freedoms here on US soil. And when they arrived, they were determined not only to build a better and more beautiful world for themselves, but for all people. And so our organization for more than 120 years has been on the forefront of social change, from the rise of the labor movement and the uprising of the 20,000 and the beginning of the century to the civil rights movement and straight up today as these attacks continue by the Trump administration from the inside on our American democracy. After having gone on from the outside for so many years, the Worker Circle is so pleased to work with the Not Above the Law Coalition, in which this idea for Disappeared in America came about. And so I'm here today as one coalition member, speaking on behalf of a Jewish organization about these horrendous and cruel disappearances by ICE of our neighbors, the human beings who live in our community, who contribute so much to our community. And I'm glad to be here with Juan from Sheriff Accountability Action, who really brings such substantive work in this area that's so important right now.
Thanks, Noelle.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Noelle. Juan, yes, please share with our audience the amazing and vital work that your organization is doing and how you're working with this cross coalition effort.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. My name is Juan Cuba. I'm a proud immigrant and also executive director of Sheriff Accountability Action. And to explain a little bit about our work, sheriffs are some of the most powerful and least accountable elected officials in America. There are over 3,000 sheriffs elected across the country. Many have near total control over incarceration in their county jails. They play a critical role in the deportation pipeline, and they're also responsible for public safety in their communities. And so the work at Sheriff Accountability Action, we work both advocacy and elections to reduce harm and to organize with the ones who are willing to defend the rule of law. Not all sheriffs are bad actors when it comes to cooperation with ICE. There are some that have been standing up to ICE, but the ones that are enabling ICE's abuses are helping to dismantle civil liberties, not just for the immigrant community, but for everyone. So definitely very proud to be working with Noelle and with the larger coalition on this work because sheriffs, the Trump administration considers sheriffs and law enforcement as their force multiplier. And we need to sever that relationship and that tie.
Well, it's genuinely an honor to have the chance to meet you both and to help share the work that you're doing in these really extraordinary times when I think a lot of Americans can feel really hopeless about what's happening, even though recent polling shows that a majority of people in the country, this was a PBS poll that came out this past week, a majority of the people in this country do not favor these extremely harsh immigration measures and actually favor pathways to citizenship, other ways to help address the refugee and immigration crisis than these extreme measures that the Trump administration has sought to impose. I wonder if each of you could share with us something that the coalition has done, or key things the coalition has done that you think maybe people don't realize has happened, or ways in which people may better understand the path of hope that you and your organization and your allies are setting forth?
Well, maybe I could start by saying a bit of what the Disappeared in America campaign has already done. So back on June the 24th, when the National Sheriff's Association was meeting in Fort Lauderdale and all the sheriffs in the nation were present, the Worker Circle worked together with faith organizations to collect a letter from leaders of faith and conscience to the National Sheriff's Association, calling on them to stop collaborating with ICE in the disappearance of our neighbors. We called on them from a moral standpoint. We believe that sheriffs who are fundamentally in charge of our public safety understand how going after immigrants together with ICE can compromise the safety of all of us and compromise the sense that immigrants themselves no longer feel empowered to report a crime, perhaps that has occurred to them, or if they have knowledge of criminal activity, to report that either. It's a real breakdown in our communities. And we know these are not criminals, right? Donald Trump came to office with the promise to deport criminals, to be hard. He used all of these exaggerated metaphors like invasion and just disgusting kinds of comparisons to demean, to degrade, to put a barrier between those of us who are not immigrants and those who are immigrants. And right now, as we see ICE coming into communities, masked up, not wearing identifying information, not showing warrants, and swarming on people who have had student visas, green cards, TPS status. These are not only undocumented people, many of whom have been living and working and contributing to our community for years, but they've been swarming and abducting, literally, and holding people or disappearing them into foreign prisons without lawyers, without due process in court, without the ability to talk to their family. It's absolutely outrageous. So as faith leaders and leaders of conscience, we sent this letter urging the sheriffs to not cooperate with ICE in the disappearance of our neighbors. We had over 12,000 signatures on that. It was delivered following a rally and press conference outside. And one of the sheriffs, the sheriff from Ann Arbor, proudly was out with us standing up. Because the important thing is sheriffs have to stand up against this too. They're elected officials, and we expect them to do their part in this moment. So we had that very successful action. And then on June 26th, we held a photo action where all across the country, people held up large posters of individuals who had been kidnapped and disappeared by ICE. Some of them were mothers, some of them were students, some of them you might have heard of, like Mahmoud Khalil. But these pictures were an attempt to humanize what's going on. These people are ordinary people, are hardworking people, are part of our community. And so to underscore how cruel and immoral this is, we gathered at courthouses and in public locations with posters of people who had been disappeared to say, not on our watch, we do not agree with this. And those have all been posted to social media. People continue to post to the hashtag Disappeared in America campaign. And we have a toolkit that lets you join in with that campaign. And then finally, we held a Talk to Your Sheriffs training on June the 30th, where Juan and his colleague from Sheriff's Accountability Action spoke. And right now, people are making appointments to go and sit down face to face with their sheriffs to tell them we want them to stop this collaboration and to treat them as the neighbors that they are, as well as elected officials in our community that need to be responsive to the people. Now, every so often there's a sheriff that is appointed rather than elected, happens to be the case in my county, but regardless, people are making appointments and letting their voices be heard, that we need to stop this cruel, dehumanizing, and unconstitutional, fundamentally lawless campaign by President Trump.
Thank you so much, Noelle. Juan, can you tell us a little bit more about some of those actions regarding the sheriffs organizing, and also if you could address this phenomena that we've seen in recent years of these so-called constitutional sheriffs who claim, even more enormous powers despite the limited powers that sheriffs actually have under, state law and county laws.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. First, I want to speak from personal experience because I'm an immigrant. I live and work in Miami, and such a big part of our community's identity has been the immigrant experience. And there's real fear in the community. Like Noelle said, they're not going after criminals, they're going after communities and, going after people in their workplaces, people that are going for their immigration appointments at courthouses. And so it is very, there is a lot of trauma happening on a daily basis in our communities. And, it is critical that our sheriffs do not participate in those activities. Because at the end of the day, what is happening is that we're letting the Trump administration push the boundaries of the attacks on civil society and civil liberties, and that impacts all of us, right? They're doing it through the prism of immigration, by picking out a vulnerable community like undocumented immigrants. But as Noelle said, it's not even just undocumented, right? They're going after legal permanent residents, people that I have friends that are on temporary protected status, that are losing it. Right? This is impacting millions of people, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, Haitians, a huge swath of the community that makes up Miami-Dade County. The constitutional sheriffs are an even more, it's a dangerous ideology, basically, that says that the sheriff is the highest law of the land in the county where they serve. They don't have to, they get to interpret the Constitution themselves. They don't believe that they need to follow state or federal law if they believe it's unconstitutional. And this movement has had gained some steam a couple decades ago, and the kind of Trump 1.0 blew life back into it. But it is a very dangerous ideology, and for those that live in counties where their sheriff believes that they are above state law, where they don't want to follow red flag laws. For example, this is happening in Colorado and in Washington State, where they're just not going to enforce it. And in some states that limit cooperation with ICE, some of these sheriffs want to go around that and still participate as much as they can with ICE. So the best way to counteract that is just to beat them at the ballot box, because these sheriffs are, at the end of the day, are elected. And those communities need to organize and elect people that will respect the rule of law and protect the communities that they were elected to serve.
You talked about the way this undermines us, and it undermines all of us. And this, we might look at it first through the prism of immigrants and immigration, but it's not really ultimately about that. Those are the people that are being targeted. The administration is saying these people don't deserve the protections of the Constitution that they should under the law, right? And when those constitutional protections are removed, whether that's being able to have their day in court and look their accuser in the eye, to have a charge and a warrant brought, all of those things, when you begin to remove them for some of us, it undermines it for all of us. And that's why this whole initiative has grown up inside the Not Above the Law Coalition, which is dedicated to not only saying that no one is above the law, including the president, but that the law belongs to all of us and must protect all of us.
You know, I think that as you both have described this, the gap between the rhetoric of the Trump administration and the reality of how it is going about, because, you know, there are people who have committed crimes in the United States, both citizens and non-citizens. And those people are, for the most part, incarcerated. And at the end of those sentences, based on federal law, those individuals, if they've committed a crime that qualifies for deportation, are deported. And so this idea that the United States is filled with criminal aliens is simply false. And in fact, the United States economy, our communities have been enriched by immigrants, both people who have come here with documentation and those who don't have documentation. And as you pointed out, both of you pointed out, this is not just an assault on immigrants. It's an assault on our communities. And you, through this Disappeared in America effort, this effort to shine a light on this, you're really standing up for the most fundamental rights of human beings, rights that date back to the Magna Carta, in terms of nobody being seized by someone in authority without any check, any way to talk to a lawyer or get before an immigration judge or a federal judge to find out what the charges are against them. And we've seen fathers and mothers and children ripped away from their families through these cruel policies. And one of the things that's been so chilling for me from, you know, my vantage point has been seeing this combination of men and women, some in uniform, whether they're ICE uniforms or other uniforms, some without uniforms, masked without identification, people being seized and kidnapped. In courthouses, like you said, Juan, going in for a citizenship test, for example, or, you know, showing up in court for another proceeding, or also being targeted at churches, at schools, at hospitals, nannies being seized on playgrounds while they're caring for children, people who have real ID, you know, the driver's licenses, having those being disregarded by ICE agents or contractors, having people who have visas or have, you know, other documentation that they are citizens being seized, drawn up in these raids. This, as you point out, Noelle, this affects all of us. This sort of lawlessness, this idea that people can just be grabbed and then, you know, have no necessary process that the law actually requires. It is an extraordinarily dangerous time. And so I just want to applaud both of you and your organizations for your courage in standing up and for your tremendous efforts to try to make sure people understand what's really happening, not just the propaganda that appears on some news channels or, you know, stations like Fox, but that what's really happening in our communities. And so I know you all have a toolkit and other information that people can use to take action. I wonder whether, Juan, you could describe some of those steps that people can take, and Noelle, if you could join in with that.
Yeah, no, thanks. I want to talk about the quieter ways that sheriffs cooperate with ICE and the mass deportation system. And maybe, Noelle, you can share the Toolkit website. But what we mostly see are these kidnappings, right? That's what goes viral on social media and what gets played on the news with ICE that are masked up. But sheriffs also cooperate, are ICE's pipeline to mass deportations. They hand people over to ICE. They hold them in their local jails. They grease the wheels of the mass deportation machine. So it's really important for people to understand like the ways in which they work, so they're able to ask their sheriff to like not do those things. So first off, a lot of sheriffs are signing agreements with ICE to hold people in their jails. They could be they're called Intergovernmental Services Agreement, IGSAs, where they basically agree to get reimbursed by ICE to keep detainees for a set period of time. And that's important because ICE has a logistical issue. The number of people that they are taking in, they are running out of bed space. And so if sheriffs are, you know, lending their bed space to ICE, it is it is one of the one of the things that activists can do to kind of prevent increasing the capacity of ICE. The other way that sheriffs are cooperating is through detainer requests. So when someone gets booked in jail, right before they're convicted, they still have to go to their bond hearing, etc. That information is sent to the federal government, and ICE will sometimes issue detainer requests. And those detainer requests say that the sheriff should hold individuals for an additional 48 hours after they should be released so that ICE can come and pick them up. Two things here. One, ICE's databases are terrible. Some detainer requests have been sent to U.S. citizens, to green card holders, and others. Like, this very faulty system, to the point where ICE has lost an important court case out of California. I think it was Gonzalez versus California, or Gonzalez versus ICE, and showing how bad the database is. And then, these are requests. They're not required. Now, there are some states that are making it required by state law to honor these requests, but in the states that don't make it required, sheriffs should not be honoring those. The other ways are more formal agreements with ICE called 287G. And there are various models under these 287Gs. All of them are bad. There's two models that speak specifically to jail enforcement. And they require kind of that honoring of those detainer requests and facilitating the execution of those ICE warrants that are sent to, that is the next step after the detainer is sent. And then the worst one is called the task force model. This is kind of like the Joe Arpaio, show me your papers style model, where they deputize local police to ask for your papers and to question your legal status. It has become extremely prevalent in Florida. Under political pressure and political threats, all 67 sheriffs in Florida have signed it, but a lot of sheriffs, it's expanding way beyond Florida. It is these type of agreements were banned back in 2012 after DOJ investigations found that it led to racial discrimination, and it was brought back earlier this year by the Trump administration. Again, this is something that everyone should be contacting their sheriffs. Like, do not sign these agreements. There are other little ways that some sheriffs are like sharing information with ICE, like license plate readers, and other things like that. The last one that I'll mention, because it's one that I really fear, is that earlier this year, ICE dumped 700,000 of their civil warrants. So these aren't judicially reviewed. These are not criminal warrants. These are just written by ICE officers because they believe someone is deportable. So they dumped 700,000 of these civil warrants into the police database. So anytime, someone runs your license, someone, if you're in an accident or you they stop you for speeding or a broken taillight, they'll run your license or they'll run your name if you don't provide them an ID. And then these ICE warrants might pop up. Police officers cannot enforce those immigration warrants unless they've been deputized under 287G. But, what some police departments and sheriff's offices are doing is they're calling ICE. It's like, hey, I got this ICE warrant pop up. I am, come here, and they'll drag their feet. That is unconstitutional. They should not be doing that, right? They should write you your ticket and not wait a second after that. But we have seen memos circulating from the Florida Highway Patrol and other sheriff's offices that are suggesting that you wait a reasonable amount of time, and everyone's defining that differently. Some are saying like 30 minutes is a reasonable amount of time. Some even say 1 hour from initial contact is reasonable. They should not be calling ICE to enforce their ICE warrants. So these are all little ways that the mass deportation machine is facilitated by local law enforcement, and all ways that people should be asking, hey, are you doing X, Y, and Z? But no, I don't know if you want to share a little more about the toolkit.
Sure. I know that for people who aren't lawyers and people who don't work in the immigration space or the law space, they might be thinking, oh my gosh, what would I say if I ever sat down with my sheriff? How do I put a meeting like this together? And that's what the Talk to Your Sheriff campaign has been about. And there are resources out at talktoyoursheriff.org, including a video of the training that Juan and I and others did a little over a week ago. It includes a link to stories of people who have been abducted and disappeared. And boy, when you click on that link and you start reading these stories, unconscionable does not even come close. People will feel it. And those stories are important because they're human beings. These aren't statistics. They aren't immigrants. They aren't this or that. They're human beings. And so we invite people to look at that. And then we invite people to click on the Talk to Your Sheriff toolkit. And this is a soup to nuts toolkit. It's very simple, low-tech Google Doc that you go into, and it'll say, okay, to start off, create an RSVP page so you can pull your group together that's going to meet with your sheriff. Find your sheriff's contact information. We step you through how to do this. Send a request to your sheriff for the meeting. Make sure that when you put it in, you follow up. Invite faith leaders and other community leaders to join. This is really important. You don't want to just go in by yourself, but you remembering that the people who are being abducted and disappeared are truly part of our communities. They're being taken for working, for worshiping, for attending school, for contributing to our economies. So invite leaders from the community to join you in this meeting. And then when you meet with your sheriff, we give you a suggested agenda. We want this to be a serious exchange, not people going in and just shouting somebody down or just becoming mute when the sheriff says, well, this is how it is, but rather to engage the sheriff, to ask questions. How is the department currently cooperating with ICE? What sorts of things are you doing? And we provide a whole checklist so that people can ask about these things. And when they view the training video and review the slides, that gives the content to it so they can feel really secure when they're in there. Look, what we're trying to do is increase the moral weight on these sheriffs. They have the potential by standing up and saying no to stop the acceleration of these wrongful acts. And we want to increase that tension in them because so many of them actually don't want to be in this position at all. And when they're laying their head on the pillow at night, they have to live with where they're at. We want to give them the support to say no, to stand up, to speak out, to be counted, and to know that people in their community are going to stand up with them. Because every time we're silent when these things happen, it simply emboldens this administration further, right? They're just going to do more and do worse. I mean, we look at the terrible bill that just passed, that was signed into law, that gives so much additional funding to ICE, whether that's to increase detention centers or hire more people. We look at alligator Alcatraz. What a hideous concept, and shoddily done swiftly. I know Juan can say more about that. Look at the militarization of the response as well, right? So Trump started in California with federalizing the National Guard and getting access to deploy Marines. And now guess what? Oh, Marines, military being deployed to Florida now to assist ICE. If we do not speak out, they will continue to take and to push. So now is the time, as we say in Jewish tradition, to not stand idly by. And I do want to say one word to those of us who are in the Jewish community, and that is this. The administration has tried to justify some of their attacks and kidnapping of people on the grounds that they're combating anti-Semitism. We at the Worker Circle believe that is hogwash. We've said so publicly. Most notably, Mahmoud Khalil or Rumezia Ozturk are two examples that most viewers will probably know about. And it's important for us as a Jewish organization to call out these Stasi tactics that they're using, because our own community has experienced these in the past, whether that's in East Germany or whether that's in Nazi Germany, whether that's in Russia or other places. So we have a special weight. But I want to tell everyone who's listening, this is something you can do. You don't need to be an expert. You see with your own two eyes what's going on is wrong. You want to do something about it? Come join us. Let's do something about it, and we'll support you all the way.
Well, thank you so much, Noelle. Thank you so much, Juan, for joining us. I hope you'll come back. It really is an honor to meet you and really appreciate your time today in the midst of the struggles that we're seeing and the fights that you're fighting for human rights. This is Lisa Graves with Court Accountability Action here on the Midas Touch Network with the Legal AF channel. Thank you for joining us, and we will make sure you have the links to take action as Noelle and Juan have so passionately urged us all to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.